What lies at the bottom of the world's oceans and lakes was supposed to be nothing: mud, rubble, and crushing darkness where no human could ever have lived. Then, divers started finding walls, straight-angled steps cut into solid rock, human skeletons resting in graves under 30 feet of seawater, streets you can swim down, frozen exactly as they were the minute the water took them. Some of these places sank so fast there are pocket watches stopped at the moment of death, and the people who built others left no name in any history book we own. Join us and let's discover the underwater structures that should not exist. Let's go.
Number 13. Yonaguni Monument. Off the southern tip of Japan, a diver named Kihachiro Aratake dropped into the water in 1986 and came face to face with a wall of stone the size of a building. Flat terraces, sharp 90-degree corners, a giant staircase descending into the blue. The structure stands around 80 feet tall and stretches longer than a football field, sitting just below the surface near Yonaguni Island. Geologists rushed to call it natural sandstone fracturing along straight plains. But Professor Masaaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus spent 15 years diving on it, and he found things erosion has no reason to make. Round holes drilled at even intervals, spaced like sockets for something heavy. A channel that looks cut to drain water. A shape worked into one wall that resembles a face. The Japanese government won't list it as man-made. It won't dismiss it either. Tourists swim across it every year, and the footage is everywhere, which is exactly why the fight never ends. You can see it with your own eyes and still not agree on what made it. And while two camps screamed over one Japanese reef, an entire city sat in the open air on a Pacific island, built from stone that weighs as much as a fleet of trucks.
Number 12. Nan Madol. 92 artificial islands rise out of a lagoon off the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, stitched together by canals so deliberate that locals called it the Venice of the Pacific. The builders stacked massive columns of black basalt, some weighing 50 tons, into walls 25 feet high, crisscrossed like log cabins. No mortar, just brute mass and impossible patience. And here's the part that keeps archaeologists up at night. Nobody can fully explain how a society on a remote island moved that much rock across open water and through reef with no draft animals and no metal tools. The local oral tradition says two sorcerers made the stones fly through the air. Modern science has no clean replacement for that legend. Radiocarbon dating pushes construction back over 800 years, some sections far older. The dynasty that ruled it vanished. The jungle and the tide are slowly reclaiming it, and the question of who hauled 50-ton stones onto a coral reef has never been answered. Across the ocean, off the coast of India, fishermen were about to pull a drowned god's city out of the water by accident.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Number 11. Dwarka. Hindu scripture describes a golden city ruled by the god Krishna, swallowed by the sea the day he died. For centuries it was treated as pure myth, until divers off the coast of Gujarat started bringing up walls, sandstone fortifications, stone anchors by the hundreds, the kind used by an organized maritime trade fleet. Grid-like foundations laid out along the seabed near modern Dwarka, at depths that would have been dry land thousands of years ago. The submerged ruins stretch across a wide band of coastline, and the closer divers looked, the more the layout resembled a planned harbor town rather than scattered rock. Skeptics insist the stones are natural and the dating is contaminated. Believers point to the precision of the anchors and the sheer scale of the foundations. The argument has never cooled because the stakes are enormous. If Dwarka is what it appears to be, an ancient religious text was describing a real city that really drowned,
thousands of years before anyone thought such a place could exist there. A few thousand miles away, a road built of perfect stone slabs was about to make that question even harder to dodge.
Number 10. Bimini Road. In 1968, off the Bahamian island of Bimini, divers found a half-mile line of enormous flat limestone blocks laid edge to edge along the sea bottom, curving gently like a paved avenue under 15 feet of water. The blocks are rectangular, evenly sized, and fitted together so cleanly that the discovery became one of the most photographed underwater anomalies on the planet within weeks. People connected it to Atlantis almost immediately. Geologists pushed back with a specific theory. Beach rock naturally fractures into rectangular slabs when it dries and cracks, and the whole thing is just a fossilized shoreline. That explanation satisfies most scientists. It satisfies almost nobody else, because divers report blocks stacked in multiple layers, and some propped on smaller stones like deliberate supports, something a cracking shoreline shouldn't do. The Bimini Road sits in shallow, warm, crystal water, endlessly filmed and endlessly argued over. But the strangest thing about it isn't the road itself. It's what locals reported seeing further out, in deeper water, before the visibility closed in, something nobody has been able to relocate since.
Number 9. Lake Titicaca Temple. 2.5 miles above sea level, on the border of Bolivia and Peru, sits the highest navigable lake on the planet, and beneath its surface lies a temple older than the Inca. For generations, Andean people told stories of a sunken city of gold below the waves of Lake Titicaca, the place their creation myths said civilization itself was born. In 2000, an international dive team confirmed part of the legend. Under the cold, thin-aired water, they mapped a stone structure around 600 feet long, with terraced walls, a road, and a retaining wall, attributed to a pre-Inca culture that vanished long ago. Divers have pulled up gold artifacts, ceramics, and stone offerings from the lakebed, where ancient people threw treasures into the water as sacrifices. The temple sat on dry land thousands of years ago, before the lake rose and erased it, matching the exact myth the locals had repeated for centuries. The pattern keeps repeating across the planet. The legends were right, and the water was hiding the proof. And in a Mexican jungle, divers found a hole in the ground where the offering thrown into the water wasn't gold. It was people.
Number 8. Sacred Cenote of Chichen Itza. A near-perfect circular pit yawns open in the Yucatan jungle, 60 feet straight down to a surface of dark green water, and the Maya believed it was a mouth into the underworld. They were right to fear it. When archaeologists dredged and then dove the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza, they brought up gold discs hammered with battle scenes, jade, carved bells, copal incense, and rubber, a fortune thrown into the black water as offerings to the rain god. Then they brought up the bones. Hundreds of human skeletons lay scattered on the cenote floor, and analysis showed many belonged to children and young adults, with injuries suggesting they were thrown in alive. This was a sacrificial well, and the pilgrims came for centuries to feed it. The water is so deep and so dark that divers work by feel in places, surrounded by 1,000 years of treasure and the dead who were sent down with it. The cenote proves the most valuable thing in ancient culture buried underwater wasn't always stone or gold. Sometimes it was a life. And on a beach in Israel, the dead were buried gently. Then the sea came and kept them exactly where they lay for 9,000 years.
Off the coast of Israel, beneath 36 feet of Mediterranean water, lies a village that was alive when the first farmers on Earth were still figuring out how to grow grain. Atlet Yam dates back around 9,000 years, a Neolithic settlement preserved so completely that archaeologists found human skeletons still lying in their graves, undisturbed. The centerpiece is haunting. 7 massive stones, each weighing up to 1/3 of a ton, standing upright in a semicircle around what was once a freshwater spring, arranged like a Stone Age monument with no obvious practical purpose. House foundations, hearths, wells, and stockpiles of grain sit frozen in the sand. Then came the detail that chilled researchers. Skeletons here carry the earliest known cases of tuberculosis in human history, and the layout hints the village was abandoned in a hurry, possibly swept away by a tsunami from a collapsing volcano in the Mediterranean. A thriving farming community drowned in a single catastrophic event 9,000 years ago, and frozen so perfectly that we know what diseases its people carried. In China, the water didn't slowly creep in over a tragedy. Engineers deliberately drowned an entire imperial city in a single decade.
Number 6. Xicheng, Lion City. In 1959, the Chinese government needed a hydroelectric dam, so they flooded a valley and let a man-made lake rise over a 1,000-year-old city. Xicheng, the Lion City, vanished under what is now Qiandao Lake, sealed beneath up to 130 feet of fresh water and forgotten for decades. When divers finally went looking in this century, they found something extraordinary. The cold, still, oxygen-poor water had preserved the entire city like a time capsule. Intricately carved stone archways with dragons, phoenixes, and lions still crisp as the day they were cut. Wooden beams that should have rotted centuries ago still in place. 5 entrance gates, wide paved streets, and walls dating to the Ming and Qing dynasties, all standing in eerie silence at the bottom of the lake. No erosion, no sunlight, no decay. A complete ancient city frozen underwater, accidentally turned into the best-preserved sunken city on Earth. If water this still can keep a city flawless for over half a century, the obvious question is what a deeper, older, saltwater grave could be protecting. And in the Mediterranean, the answer was the playground of emperors.
Number 5. Baiae. The wealthiest, most decadent resort in the entire Roman Empire now sits on the floor of the Bay of Naples, and you can scuba dive through its streets. Baiae was where emperors and senators built lavish villas, heated spas, and marble palaces to indulge in pleasures the rest of Rome only whispered about. Julius Caesar had a home here. Nero and Caligula partied along this coast. Then the ground betrayed them. The whole region sits on a volcanic field called the Phlegrean Fields, and over centuries the land slowly sank, dragging the luxury district beneath the sea. Today, divers glide over intact mosaic floors, statue-lined courtyards, and columns still standing where they were placed 2,000 years ago, swimming down roads like a flooded ghost town. It's an underwater archaeological park now, and the photos look almost fake. Roman statues gazing up through clear blue water. Baiae proves the sea doesn't only take primitive villages, it took the playground of the most powerful empire on Earth. Off the coast of Greece, an entire town went down 4,000 years before Christ, and unlike everything else here, nobody disputes a single stone of it.
4,000 years before Christ, people walked streets that now lie 13 feet beneath the Mediterranean, off the southern coast of Greece. Pavlopatri is the oldest submerged town ever found, and this is the one nobody argues about. The layout is undeniable, a complete street plan, dozens of buildings with walls still tracing rooms and courtyards, gardens and graves cut into the rock. Researchers mapped it so precisely they generated a full digital reconstruction showing exactly how the town stood when it was alive. Doorways, water channels, all of it. A real, functioning Bronze Age settlement, slipped under the waves by rising seas and earthquakes, and forgotten for millennia. What makes Pavlopatri detonate the whole debate is that it removes the excuse. When skeptics wave away every other site as random rock, Pavlopatri stands there as undeniable proof that entire organized cities vanish under the ocean and survive down there in perfect detail. Which forces one question to the front. If a town this old is sitting in Greek shallows, how many more are out there? And what happened to the ones that didn't sink slowly, but dropped in a single afternoon?
In 2001, an Indian government team was running pollution surveys in the Gulf of Khambhat off western India. when their sonar returned something that stopped the boat cold. 220 feet down, on the sea floor, were geometric shapes, rectangular outlines arranged in a grid, regular patterns stretching across miles of seabed in two distinct zones, looking like the foundations of sunken cities laid out in blocks. Then dredging brought up the objects that turned a curiosity into a global firestorm. Pottery shards, beads, sculpted stone, what appeared to be human teeth and bone. One piece of wood pulled from the site was carbon dated to roughly 9,500 years old. If those structures are man-made and that old, they predate the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and every civilization in the textbooks, pushing the entire timeline of human history backward into an age when humans were supposed to be scattered hunter-gatherers. Mainstream archaeologists fired back that the dated wood could be unrelated driftwood, and the shapes could be carved by currents. No full excavation ever settled it. The data sits in a government report, and the gulf sits there, 200 feet deep and silent. But the sea floor was about to give up something nobody could call a coincidence. A city the Greeks swore was real, that everyone else swore was a fairy tale.
Number 2. Port Royal. June 7th, 1692, 11:40 in the morning. Port Royal, Jamaica, the richest and most notorious pirate city in the Caribbean, a den of buccaneers, taverns, and stolen gold so wicked that preachers called it the most sinful place on earth, was thriving one moment and gone the next. A massive earthquake struck, and the sandy ground the city was built on turned to liquid. Streets, taverns, and entire stone buildings sank straight down into the harbor in minutes, swallowing roughly 2,000 people. The sea poured in over the wreckage. What makes Port Royal extraordinary is the speed. It was buried so fast that everyday life was frozen in place. Divers working the site have recovered a pocket watch stopped at the exact moment of the quake, buildings standing upright on the seafloor, and personal belongings caught mid-use. It is one of the only sunken cities where you can name the precise minute of its death. A whole empire of crime dropped into the sea in the time it takes to eat lunch. But the greatest sunken city of the ancient world wasn't lost in a minute. It was lost for over 1,000 years, so completely that historians decided it had never existed at all.
Number 1. Thonis Heracleion. For more than 1,000 years, Egypt's greatest port city was a ghost story. Ancient texts name Thonis Heracleion as the gateway through which all trade entered Egypt, the place where Helen of Troy supposedly fled, and then it simply disappeared from the map. Historians began to suspect the Greeks had invented it, that it was a myth dressed up as geography. In 2000, a French underwater archaeologist sweeping Abu Qir Bay near Alexandria found it. An entire city resting on the seabed under 30 feet of water in sediment. Colossal red granite statues of pharaohs, 16 feet tall, lying toppled on the seafloor. A great temple. Dozens of sunken ships preserved in the mud. Gold coins, jewelry, and giant stone slabs carved with hieroglyphs recording royal decrees. The city had been the beating heart of Egyptian commerce, and rising water, earthquakes, and the swale itself liquefying dragged the whole thing into the bay. Then the very mud that drowned it preserved it almost perfectly for 15 centuries. A documented metropolis, erased from human memory so thoroughly that scholars called it a legend, was lying intact just offshore the entire time. Which leaves the only question that matters. If a city this large could vanish this completely and wait this long to be found, what else is the water still hiding from us?
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.